Sure.
If I could request all of you to please switch on your videos for a minute so that we capture everyone on our website when the recording goes on our website.
Yeah, Rashmi, this conference reminds me of my time in Africa. I was posted as commercial counselor for Ethiopia, based in Kenya. I was taking care of Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Kenya, and that was from 2001 to 6. And I was so keen to visit Addis Ababa. You know, it was always so nice to be there. I mean, coming from Nairobi, one would feel so safe and, and nice in Addis, and staying at Hilton. We couldn't afford to stay at Sheraton, Addis Ababa, but I have very fond memories of those days, and it's good to see all the Ethiopian colleagues, and wish well to them and their families and for the whole country.
Thank you, Dr. Safdar. We all have very good memories of Addis, and hopefully we'll be able to visit Addis soon. Okay, so
You're welcome.
You're
welcome to join us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So a very warm welcome to all the panelists and participants to this webinar. We are going to discuss the digital transformation of Ethiopia, lessons from other developing countries in this webinar today. The webinar is being organized under our project on South-South integration and SDGs, enhancing structural transformation in key partner countries of the Belt and Road Initiative. The main aim of our project is to facilitate structural transformation in developing countries by sharing successful policy experiences in 5 main areas. These are macro and finance, trade and industrial policies, digital economy, and debt sustainability policies. Our pilot countries in the project are Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia. And one of the developing countries who has really been structurally able to transform itself is China, which was able to transform from an agrarian economy to a global manufacturing hub and now to a digital leader. So we all know that we cannot replicate China's policy experiences, but there are some key lessons that can be learned by developing countries. And our project aims at sharing that key lessons from China's structural transformation, as well as from other developing countries' structural transformation. So today in this webinar, we are going to focus on digital policies. And we are very fortunate to have a very distinguished panel today who will be sharing their policies of their countries. And we are also very fortunate that we are partnering with Policy Studies Institute for this project, especially on the digital policies. We have a very important and an excellent paper prepared by PSI, which will be presented today. We are also very thankful to Professor Petros, who is the Executive Director of PSI, who will be delivering his keynote address today. So I will turn to the panelists after the keynote address. So let me invite Professor Petros to give his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Banga. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Addis Ababa. In my capacity as the Director General of Policy Studies Institute, Ethiopia, I welcome you all to the second webinar on the South-South integration, sharing of policy experiences, series organized by the PSI and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Today's webinar is on the challenges of building a digital economy in Ethiopia, which is a new topic for Ethiopia. It is also a promising sector as it has significantly untapped potential for building a resilient and competitive economy. For almost 2 decades, Ethiopia had registered remarkable economic growth and considerable poverty reduction, as we have heard in the last session. However, success in terms of structural transformation to higher value subsectors within sectors and among sectors has been limited. The agricultural sector remains, by and large, the main employer and source of foreign exchange in Ethiopia. While the share of the service sector in the economy has grown, its contribution to employment and exports remains limited. Moreover, the growth in the services sector has often been towards low productivity, informal subsectors that do not adequately provide enabling support to the rest of the sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing. High-value subsectors within the service sector, such as ICT, remain insignificant. The industrial sector's recent growth has mainly been driven by fast growth in the construction subsector, while the manufacturing industry remains small in terms of contribution to GDP, employment, and export in Ethiopia. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the key weaknesses of the Ethiopian economy remains to be low productivity and competitiveness. One potential enabling factor for enhancing productivity and competitiveness lies in the digital economy. The digital economy, particularly e-commerce, has immense potential in large countries like Ethiopia, with significant domestic market for efficient and effective distribution of goods and services. The importance of the digital economy as a key factor in enhancing the productivity and competitiveness of the rest of the economy is paramount. This has been particularly evident with the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, as digital infrastructure became crucial for businesses and consumers, as working remotely became essential for private enterprises, as well as government and non-government institutions. In our ongoing 10-year perspective plan, 2020 to 2030, the digital economy is identified as the priority sector. Some of the recent progress in this regard includes the preparation of the Communication Services Proclamation in 2019, Digital Ethiopia Strategy 2025, and the National ICT Policy for Higher Education and TVET of 2020, among others. As we implement these policies and strategies, learning from successful emerging countries in the South, such as China, will be crucial for our success. China's success in integrating the traditional economic system with ICT has enabled it to continue to be highly productive in agriculture, manufacturing, and the service sector. China's achievement in this regard provides optimism for the rest of the developing countries, such as ours, that it can be done if appropriate policies and strategies are put in place and implemented. The purpose for today's presentation on the digital economy are part of the collaboration between PSI and the UNCTAD. It is one among other similar projects in macroeconomic, debt, trade, and industrial policies that aim to assess current policies in Ethiopia and draw lessons from China's success. Let me stop here. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope the seminar will be a great success. Thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Petros. Thank you for highlighting the potential of digital economy in terms of increasing productivity and also the competitiveness of developing countries, especially Ethiopia, and also highlighting that China can provide some key lessons for designing digital policies in our countries. So thank you very much. Let me move forward to the panel discussion now. And we are extremely fortunate to have with us a very distinguished panel, which will be sharing digital policies in the countries like Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Let me first request Dr. Tsegay, who is the lead researcher of PSI, to make his presentation, mainly focusing on the state of digital economy in Ethiopia and what lessons can be learned in shaping digital policies from other countries. So over to you, Dr. Tsegay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashmi Banga. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about Ethiopia's status in digital policy, digital economy, and also lessons from China. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can, please.
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
Yes.
So this is the outline of my quick talk. So I think I'll just immediately go to the presentation. So the objectives of this project has been to assess the state of digital economy in Ethiopia and also explore the policies and strategies relevant to the digital economy so far in Ethiopia, and also review China's experience in digital transformation and suggest lessons for our country. So the method of the research method has been mostly desk-based review of policies and strategies relevant for digital transformation in Ethiopia and China, focusing how digital economy features in national development policies, and also some sector-specific policy and strategies relevant to digital transformation. We also explore available data on digital economy in Ethiopia. So first, a very brief highlight on the structure of the Ethiopian economy. As you all know, in the last 20 years, the Ethiopian economy has been growing by about 9–10%, except in 2002, where there was droughts. And the per capita GDP growth has been around 6%, is pretty consistent. When we look at the sectoral drivers of growth, so this 9% grows between 2000 and 2019. So here we look at which sectors really drove this growth. So when we look at the sectoral drivers in recent years, you can see that it's the service sector which has been really driving the growth. This the green one. So in 2019, 40% of this 9% growth came from the service sector. Followed by the construction sector, this blue, this bold dark blue, and then agriculture. Manufacturing has really the least contribution to growth. So really, despite the government's focus on manufacturing, the role of manufacturing in driving growth has been very, very, very little. While construction, this one, has been small in early years, but has been really, really growing in recent years. So it's really the service sector and the construction sector that has been driving growth in Ethiopia, especially in recent years. When we look at the sort of the share by sector in Ethiopia, the service sector, this is the service sector, is dominant, about 40% in 2019, for example, followed by agriculture, about 30%, and then by industry, which is about 27%. However, industry has manufacturing, construction, and mining. So when we sort of disentangle the industry, we see that the construction sector is really by far the biggest in industry. So that's why, so this part of the growth in industry is really driven by the construction sector. So when we look briefly at some other measures of well-being in Ethiopia, such as human development, there has been progress as well in the last 20 years. However, there is quality concerns at all levels of education. There is also dropout rates. There is also low enrollment in sort of secondary education and stuff like that. There is challenges in health as well, like high maternal mortality, and stunning also is a major problem in Ethiopia. Still, there has been improvement in Human Development Index, but still, we still remain on the low side. Poverty in the last between 2000 and 2015, it has been halved from about 50% to 25%, but still 25% of poor people in Ethiopia is like 25 million people. So still, it's a big challenge. When we look at the labor market has a very poor information system in Ethiopia at the moment. There's high urban unemployment and also underemployment. There is high underemployment and low earning in rural areas as well. When we look at the macroeconomy, rising inflation, fiscal deficit, and foreign debt are the key problems. As you know, most of the growth in the last 20 years was driven by high investment, which also led to fiscal deficit and foreign debt. That's why in the homegrown reform agenda, these issues were really priorities to sort of correct before going to the 10-year perspective plan. When we look at the digital economy, so the digital economy in Ethiopia is in its nascent stage. There are very few private sector actors and some government-driven digitalization initiatives. And as you know, public monopoly of telecom has been the case in Ethiopia until pretty much last year or this year. And the Communication Service Proclamation, as Professor Bayena mentioned earlier, of 2019, really creates the basis for market liberalization and also, has given access to private licenses, precisely to two private licenses. One is already given and one is in the process. So in general, despite progress in terms of ICT infrastructure in Ethiopia, Ethiopia remains at the bottom group of countries in the world when we look at the Ict Development Index developed by the International Telecommunication Union. So for example, in 2017, Ethiopia ranked 170 out of 176, so we are really at the bottom end. So the International ICT Development Index is a composite index for measuring progress in ICT and digital trends. It consists of access, use, and skills. So Ethiopia ranks comparable with the other least developing countries in terms of some aspects of access, but really lags in use and skills. Here I have a big table, but I don't want to spend much time on this, but I just want to tell you that in some aspects of access, for example, fixed telephone subscription and also percentage of households with internet access, sort of Ethiopia ranks comparably with LDCs. But in most other factors, Ethiopia really trails behind compared to LDCs, Africa, or developing countries. So another key challenge in Ethiopia, like also most countries in Africa, is cost. So despite this expansion in fiber in the country, in fiber optics and stuff like that, price remained very high in Ethiopia. For example, in 2020, among 180 countries with data on internet prices, Ethiopia ranked 31st most expensive, with about 13.2% of gross national income per capita. The cost per what was it per it's the cost of internet. There is a standard measure for that, so they sort of compare it to the national income. So Ethiopia, it's pretty expensive in Ethiopia, and of course the telecom monopoly contributed to this expensive and also unreliable service. And unreliable electric supply is also one challenge to really access and continuously use digital tools in Ethiopia. There is also a digital divide in the country, lack of availability, affordability, and low quality of broadband connectivity. Of course, in a very recent periods, there has been expansion of 4G in more counts in the country. Here, I'm not going to say much. So this is how digital economy or digital policy future in the national development plans in the last 20 years. So, you know, in the last 20 years, mostly the focus has been to view ICT as an enabling sector. So there has been attempts to, you know, mention or have a section of ICT in the various development plans starting 2000. So it was not really viewed as a sector on its own. But I think it's better if to save time, I'll just go to the sort of summary of it. So I have here a summary. What has been done in Ethiopia in terms of digital economy until 2020. And then I will mention briefly about recent progress. So generally, there has been expansion of telecom infrastructure, but with limited quality and affordability. There has been very limited participation of the private sector. Government was both a regulator and the provider, as you know, until 2021 pretty much. And coordination problem, you know, usually national ICT policy was implemented at project level, not really embedded in the national economy. And there has been lack of incentive system for ICT sector. There is stringent requirements for FDI to engage in ICT, as you know, in general, not only for FDI, for ICT. There is a minimum cap of USD 200,000 investment for foreigners to engage in Ethiopia. So in general, as you know, ICT doesn't really require a lot of startups, they don't require a lot of money, but this cap is really hinders FDI participation in the sector. And there has been plans such as initiatives, let's call them digital ID, but implementation has been very, very sluggish. And also there is lack of legal and regulatory framework for the sector. There is some, there's been startup, regulations for startups. There is one act being drafted at the moment, but otherwise there hasn't been until 2020. So recent progress in the 10-year perspective plan, as Professor Bayena mentioned earlier, it's now a priority sector. So there's a number of initiatives or plans where is it? Here, there is a plan to build a national data center. There is a plan to launch e-commerce and e-payment ecosystem in the country. I'll mention later. There's some attempts already. There is a plan to complete East African e-commerce logistics hub in Addis. So there is also a national technology production hub is being built. And also there is a plan to really enhance broadband coverage in the country, about 100% to 100% of businesses to use broadband. So that's sort of the plan in the coming 10 years. Moreover, the 10-year perspective plan, there is also separate strategies for the digital economy. So one, I already mentioned, the Communication Service Proclamation of 2019. There is Digital Ethiopia 2025, and also there is National ICT Policy for Higher Education and TVET by the Ministry of Education now. The name has changed to Ministry of Education now. And also there is the Startup Business Proclamation, which is being drafted, and hopefully it will be changed into law maybe in a year or so. So there are some challenges to sort of implement the plan, this ambitious plan in the coming 10 years. One is digital transformation cannot be achieved by government only. There is really a need for an incentive and support system for the private sector. And high informality, like Professor Bayena mentioned earlier, Ethiopian productivity in general has been low, and mostly to sort of low productive informal sectors. That has been the trend. So high informality in the country and a very slow structural transformation, as we saw earlier as well, is a challenge. Power outage is a challenge. Power is really intrinsic to the digital economy, as you know. The capacity of the education and training system to embed digital literacy. There is definitely quality has been a problem in the Ethiopian education and training system. So it's a similar problem for sort of embedding digital aspects to the economy is going to be, to the education system is going to be really a challenge. Another challenge is monetary policy. You know, as you know, FDI is not allowed in finance. You know, so fintech. So FDI is not allowed in sort of in fintech investment, as you know, in Ethiopia. And also the fact that our monetary policy is very, very closed also limits the scope of sort of like international payment or e-commerce at global level. So this is one potential challenge, I think, in the coming 10 years. So I think this communication service proclamation is really good because it sort of separates regulation and provision. That's, I think, one of the thrust of this new proclamation. When you look at the Digital Ethiopia 2025, that's really the first comprehensive digital strategy for the country. And it really puts digital economy not only as an enabling sector, but also as an important sector on its own. So this is really good news. And it has put 4 pathways to sort of embed digitalization in the Ethiopian economy. The first one is unleash value chain in agriculture through digitalization, Internet of Things, blockchain, digital platform. So yeah, now, you know, farmers using this platform will be able to see prices, will be able to see, for example, buyers and stuff like that. There is also global value chains in manufacturing as well, the use of robotics, logistic technology and stuff like that. Logistics has been one of the key problems in Ethiopian manufacturing sector, by the way. And the third one is building IT-enabled service in general. So, you know, infrastructure, data center, broadband connectivity and stuff like that. And the fourth one is digital as the driver of tourism competitiveness. So through digital marketing, mobile apps and stuff like that, there is huge potential for tourism in the country. So this really, as you can see, sort of tries to put, to embed digitalization in all key sectors in the country, which is really new, I think, in this strategy. So yeah, there is enabling environment, digital IDs, digital payment already started with Telebir, as you know, and cybersecurity law. There has been initiatives even before about e-governance, e-commerce, but it hasn't really picked up. So now they have renewed sort of focus in the strategy. There is also, of course, broader issues of financing, human resource that I mentioned earlier, and also policies and regulations to really create an enabling business environment for digital economy. So these all issues are somehow touched upon in the Digital Ethiopia 2020. So here briefly, you know, what can Ethiopia learn from China? As you know, China is becoming the leading digital economy at the moment. There has been rapid digitalization. It's at the moment, China has the second largest digital economy, next only to the United States. The contribution of digital economy to GDP growth in China is almost half. And in the last 5-6 years, it has had a phenomenal contribution to GDP growth in China. It has one of the largest e-commerce system in the country. E-commerce is really, really important when you are especially a large country, you know, with a large domestic market. So in 2019, for example, 25% of all transactions, retail transactions in China happened through e-commerce. This is even higher than the United States. So the good news, this for us is China. Yes, it's kind of developed country at the moment, but most of like interior China, except the coastal part, has really a character of developing country. But this digitalization has really connected the whole China, and this is really a good news for us. So China has had, you know, promoted digital economy as a national strategy. It has been a national priority. In the last 15 years, there has been a lot of regulations, a lot of incentive systems, a lot of coordination for this sector. These are some of the examples that relate to the digital economy. But one thing is that digitalization is a recent phenomenon in China, but it has been able to really reap the benefits in such a short time. So digitalization in America and Europe is about 40 years, but in China it's really 15-20 years. But how they were able to really embed and reap the benefits of digitalization. So this is really great news for developing countries. And one of the really key things what the Chinese did is not only just digital industries, but really sort of digitalizing the traditional sectors. That has been really the key factor. You know, digitalizing agriculture, digitalizing manufacturing, digitalizing the service sector. So that's one key lesson that we can learn from China. So it's not really digital, the ICT sector on its own, but really all the sectors sort of augmenting or upgrading them to have digital content. And another key lesson is coordination. So in Ethiopia, it's not only in ICT, we have coordination problem everywhere. We have coordination problem in for example, industry and training. You know, they don't really read each other. And the various ministries, agencies, we really have this mandate issues, coordination problem, as you know. So for this, the Chinese had this state council that sort of coordinates the different mandates of the different agencies and institutions. So I'll just to sort of, I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just quickly summarize the key lessons that Ethiopia can learn from China. The first thing, of course, is significant digital infrastructure investment, which Ethiopia is kind of doing. The second key lesson is prudent data management system and data protection. This is very important. Lag behind in Ethiopia at the moment, and without data, proper data management, data protection, digital economy cannot really be thought of. So China requires, for example, banks and insurers to localize data under its data localization requirement based on its cybersecurity law, because there hasn't been strong data protection laws. So those companies were required to localize data. So this is one, you know, short-term way of protecting data. So similar approaches can be followed in Ethiopia until a proper data protection law is prepared and also enforced. And improved digital governance capability, a series of national laws like cybersecurity law is key, law against unfair competition. Also, China lags behind this, but it's sort of catching up. And also e-commerce, providing legal basis for digital governance and cybersecurity. This will be really, really key for the digital economy to take off in Ethiopia. Another one is enabling regulation for digital investment, light touch regulations. So China at first was sort of almost very light touch regulations. But now as the digital economy really grows, the Chinese are also now introducing, regulations to regulate it. So first, it's a good idea to sort of reduce barriers and lower limits for the market entry of Internet Plus related products. Strong coordination, I already mentioned, is really key. And digital security is very, very important. In 2017, the first cyber security law provisions for the protection of personal information, security requirements for network operators, and restrictions on personal and business data transfer. So this is very important because at the end of the day, you're gonna put your financial information or your data is gonna be somewhere. So people will really need to feel secured in order to use digital platforms and tools. And this is my last slide, is the importance of effective digital collaboration among firms. So in Ethiopia, in China, they have, data sharing models, coalition building models, and super app platforms like Alibaba and stuff. Now, there is a lot of small startups that work with big companies like Alibaba in China, for example. So we need that sort of collaborative platform in Ethiopia, unlike in America, where Amazon does everything from A to Z. So, and the last one is, special focus for e-commerce and mobile payment. In a large country like Ethiopia, about 115, 120 million people, a very large market, and logistics is a problem at the moment. So e-commerce has huge potential, huge potential. And that's what we can learn from China. So China had a series of plans for focused on e-commerce. They had a different incentive systems, sort of giving, for example, subsidized land for big warehouses for e-commerce companies. And also they had what is called free trade zones to encourage, e-commerce. One example is the Hangzhou free trade zone, and also there are several others for this. So as you know, Alibaba is in the Hangzhou free trade zone area. And also they had platforms, forums for regular engagement with the industry and policy in order to drive digital payment systems in Ethiopia. So the mobile payment has started. That's very, very promising in Ethiopia. And I think we really need to do more in sort of creating a legal framework for data protection, for cybersecurity and stuff like that. And yeah, so this is my talk. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tsegay, for this excellent presentation, which is very informative. You highlighted the challenges facing the Ethiopian economy, especially the digital economy. It is ranking low in ICT index. Ethiopia has high prices of mobile packages. There is an existing digital divide. You also talked about the need for having the national ICT policy embedded in the economy, but it is also important to have regulatory and legal framework. You also talked about the challenges of digital literacy in Ethiopia. And thank you much for sharing the plans which Ethiopia has, especially under its Digital Ethiopia 2025. You also talked about the monetary policy being closed, which is very insightful, and the key lessons from China's experience. I like the way you said that one lesson from China is that even in a short period of 20 lag behind, there is a need to digital. I also liked your insights into the need for coordination. I think it is extremely important, and also to have the lessons that your study derives on the policies around data security, as well as on e-commerce. So thank you very much for that insightful presentation. Let me now turn to our panelists. I would like to ask 3 questions. I would like to put 3 questions to the panelists. If they could share the policy experience of their countries in terms of is there a comprehensive digital policy designed in your country? If yes, what is the status of its implementation? What are the key areas of focus of this policy? So the first question is, please inform us about whether the country has a comprehensive digital policy and what is its implementation status. Second, what are the policies around data flows and data centers in your country? And the third question would be, what are the initiatives taken by your country to support the digital startups? I think that is extremely important to know for other developing countries as well. So first, I would like to invite Dr. Chanuka from Sri Lanka. Dr. Chanuka is Director of Policy in Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, which is the apex ICT institution of the government, mandated to take all necessary measures to implement the government's policy and action plan in relation to ICT. And also, ICT is one of our project partners. We are extremely fortunate to have ICT on board in our project. So Dr. Chanuka, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rashmi. Sri Lanka is actually very fortunate to have a government that understands the value of the digital economy. In fact, the IT ministry, IT minister of the country is the president himself, and that is the only ministry that he holds. So that explains the gravity the government has given to information and communication technologies in Sri Lanka. And one of the first things that has been done immediately after the president has been elected in 2019 November, that was before COVID. One of the first things that has been done is the approval of a national ICT policy, and also the national policy framework for the government. And in the national policy framework for the government, there are 10 key areas, and information and communication technology has been recognized as one area. So under that, a national information and communication technology policy has been recognized by the government, and there are 3 key areas that has been recognized as the pillars of this national digital policy, that is digital government, digital economy, and digital services. So ICTA, Information and Communication Technology Agency, is the agency that is mandated to implement this policy. And you have asked about the implementation. We are 2 years into implementation of this policy, and we have achieved many results, especially in the digital economy area. We have achieved many results. In fact, in the digital economy area, we have overachieved our results, but the other areas not to that level. But even in the digital government, we are in the verge of implementing a national digital identity, and also national data exchange. So those are the key projects that are being implemented right now. Then you have asked about the data center. Still, we don't have a tier 4 national data center in Sri Lanka, but there are plans. It's in the pipeline. But we have a tier 3 data center, government data center, which is called the Lanka Government Cloud. That is only for the government. And startups also, we are in a very futuristic implementation program for the startups, and there are about 600 startups in Sri Lanka, which we are not complacent about compared to nearby India, which has, I think around 40 unicorns now. Like forget about the startups. So we cannot be really compared Sri Lanka with the some of the other countries, but we are in the right way in the startups also. So very quickly, that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Chanuka, for being very explicit in your answers. And I think it is extremely useful to know that Sri Lanka is already implementing its national ICT policy, and how ICT policy is being taken so seriously by the president of the country. It is very heartening to know that. And you have also highlighted some of the key initiatives that you are undertaking under your national ICT policy, your national digital identity, and national data exchange. I think that is extremely useful to know. The policy around data centers, you have highlighted that there are 3 data centers which are really hosting the government data, if I have understood correctly, and there are plans in the pipeline for more data centers. And also on the digital startups, I think if you could just highlight a little bit more on what could be the, what are the policies. The 600 startups is a very good number, I think, for a country like Sri Lanka. So is there any other targeted or strategy for enhancing or making these digital startups to progress towards being unicorns? Is there anything targeted?
Exactly. Good that you have asked that question. We have actually even a funding program for the startups. The government has gone to the length of selecting 10 startups each year, and the government itself funds for startups that are, they have been selected after a competition. 10 startups we fund. And there are also angel funds that have been implemented with the initiation by ICTA, and there are many other programs to bring up the startups to the forefront. Like we have a program called eSwabhimani, where we award the best products from the startups each year in each category, like health, education, environment, different categories. We award the startups that produce the results. And more than that, last year the finance ministry with the ICTA has implemented a program for domestic preference in when they are offering software and hardware solutions. Like, say for example, less than 2 million, that is I think 20 lakhs, less than 20 lakhs, any software project should be for the government exclusively tendered by a startup company. Only startup companies can present their bids to a government tender less than 2 million rupees. That is around $10,000. Right. So likewise, we have taken many steps to bring the startups to unicorn level, which we think will happen in near future.
Thank you. That's excellent, Dr. Chanuka. Thank you so much. So now I will, can I please invite Dr. Safdar Sohail from Pakistan to now answer the 3 questions that I had posed. Dr. Sohail is currently Dean of National Institute of Public Policy in Lahore, and he's also a member of Prime Minister's Task Force on IT. So Dr. Sohail, over to you, please.
Well, thank you very much, and good to hear the other presentations also. In case of Pakistan, Pakistan, I think, has been giving due attention to the development of its ICT sector since long, since we dismantled our monopoly on telecommunications in mid-90s. In the course of my talk, I'll talk about the major milestones, but coming directly to the question which was posed, that is the presence or otherwise of digital Pakistan policy. Yes, we do have, we call it Digital Pakistan Policy. It was announced in 2018. And then to enhance the ambition, or one can say to put it into a proper framework, in 2009, the government, the Prime Minister, announced what we call Digital Pakistan Vision, with an aim to enhance connectivity, improve digital infrastructure, increase investment in digital skills, promoting innovation and tech entrepreneurships. And you talked about this task force, of which I'm a member. Actually, this was established to advance the objectives of the Digital Pakistan Vision. So now we have Digital Pakistan Policy and then Vision. I'll quickly go through the key features or pillars, you can say, of the Digital Pakistan Policy. You had asked also about the effectiveness of implementation. That I'll take it up when I take up the issue of startups, because that is one part of this Digital Pakistan Policy. So we would discuss partly the issues in implementation of these policies, which I would say usually such policy documents have all the right ingredients. So in case of Pakistan, the very first element is that this policy seeks to be holistic. It seeks to create a digital ecosystem, infrastructure, institutional framework also for the rapid delivery of innovative digital services, applications, and content. So that is that's the goal, one can say, of this policy. Now, the major contribution of this policy, one can say the new thing was the sectorial coverage, where it brought in new sectors for digitalization, like education, health, agriculture, and many other key socioeconomic sectors. Next big ticket item in this policy is e-commerce. E-commerce market in Pakistan is already growing very well. For example, if we take just one data point, that in 2013, the number of broadband subscribers in Pakistan was 3.7 million, which has now grown up to 44 million in 2017. So in a period of 4 years, from 3.7 to 44 million. The next element is aimed at reducing the inequalities, we can call it digital divide or inclusiveness otherwise, where youth, women, and girls empowerment using IT is one of the major pillar. The next one is the promotion of startups, one of our subtopic also to generate sustainable innovation, entrepreneurship, and employment opportunities for the country's rapidly growing technology savvy and entrepreneurial youth. The next important one, which is linked with the startups to an extent, is the increase in software exports and remittances linked with the IT. Another goal and pillar of digital policy is the improvement of Pakistan's ranking on different indices of ICT, which have with a view to get more FDI, to get more venture capital in the country. Then there is digital inclusion in terms of persons with disability, which is again very important, and I'm happy to share that I actually have helped the ministry to develop a framework of reduction of ICT accessibility barriers. Now, there is a digital divide between the person with disability and ordinary persons, you can say. Another dimension of digital inclusion in Pakistan policy is the digital divide between urban and rural setups. And that is one dimension which government is keen to reduce. Another one is the divide between the major cities and secondary cities. So that also is one of the major thrust of the policy. The next one is focus on e-governance. I have been part of the initiatives at the national level, member of a subcommittee on e-commerce. Things are okay, but at the provincial level, I think we are not benefiting from the potential of e-governance to enhance public service delivery and efficiencies. But there are a lot of resources being allocated. We have Pakistan Information Technology Board. All the provinces have their own information technology board, and a lot of effort is there in using e-commerce, but there's a long way to go. Another area of digital policy is to increase foreign and direct foreign and domestic investment. One key area, which is the last one can say when we look at the document, that is the standardization, which has been given due importance, and government is coordinating and supporting standardization efforts, including the facilitation of international standard certification, example CMMI, ISO, etc. Now, this is the Digital Pakistan policy. Before we come to the startup side, I'll take a few minutes to talk about the data issues. And when we talk about data issues, there are general issues concerning with data, and then there was and is a particular interest with the data protection in the whole discussion. So in this regard, I'll do a very quick history of the evolution of data protection laws, which would also tell about the development of institutional infrastructure of ICT in terms of regulatory development in the country, which again is important. And ICT is a sector which is growing very big in Pakistan now. It has a significant contribution to the GDP also. Traditionally, this sector has been lightly touched by regulation, but I think these are the issues linked with data privacy, which are forcing the governments to strengthen the regulatory regimes. So in case of Pakistan, we had our first act in 1996. That was Pakistan Telecommunication Reorganization Act, which actually opened up the telecom sector. And then in 2002, we had the Electronic Transactions Ordinance, which actually asked the service providers, private telephone service providers, to retain communication data as a condition of their operating licenses. So it did not, this law did not directly regulate the data protection, but it criminalized unlawful or unauthorized access to information. Then in 2007, Pakistan introduced what is called Prevention of Electronic Crimes Bill 2007. And in this law, we propose penalties ranging from 6 months to actually capital punishment for 17 types of cyber crimes, including cyber terrorism, criminal access. There is a long list which I have, which I can share. Then the major legislative development came in 2016 when we had this Pakistan Electronic Crime Act 2016, which is actually the current primary legislation in respect of data protection in Pakistan. But then, as we all know, with the blossoming of social media and the increasing importance of data in terms of business, brought in the vulnerabilities, the possibilities of attack, the increasing e-governance made the governments vulnerable also. So their government came up with the cybersecurity policy 2 years before. Under that policy, the government has established a cyber governance policy committee, which has a responsibility of proposing and getting approved the National Cyber Security Policy, the Act. But there, the work is still ongoing. There is a lot of debate in Pakistan on this subject, and the government floated a draft personal data protection bill in 2021. That still is a draft, and according to the, and this is the data protection bill, which I think is more relevant to today's discussion. And according to this draft, no personal data shall, without the consent of the data subject, be disclosed for any purpose other than for which the personal data was to be disclosed at time of collection of the data. Now, the draft law provides for the creation of a commission. And the key functions of the commission include receiving and deciding complaints with regard to an infringement of personal data protection, examining various laws, rules, policies, bylaws, regulations or instructions in relation to the protection of personal data. And this commission is expected to suggest amendments to bring the law in conformity with the provisions of the law. And this commission would also be monitoring cross-border transfer of personal data. Now, this commission is yet to be established. The data protection law is under discussion. There are many parallel developments in the sense also that the government wants to establish a separate regulatory authority for data and social media. We do have Pakistan Telecom Authority, which is the old standard regulator of the telecom sector. But through this law, government, and aided by the cyber crime protection law, government seeks to create another authority, which is still not on the ground. But in this law, a very important point is that the law categorizes the data, critical, non-critical, sensitive, and proposes the stipulations for the cross-border data flow also. So this is under discussion. There is a lot of debate on localization, where certain elements do not want any kind of localization, whereas there are certain forces or lobbies, one can say, which want that the processing and use of data should be organized in the interest of people, and if in the interest of people it needs to be localized, that should be better. I mean, there is, of course, one talks about the fear of misuse by the agencies, etc. But I think the real problem is that we still have ambiguous data type processing categories. For instance, in financial sector, all types of data was required to reside inside the bank. And considering the use of data and volume of transaction by the financial sector, it was not lucrative for technology companies to come and invest there. So there are a lot of issues which one wishes would have time to talk about separately. But we are in a kind of stage where the discussions are taking place. There are different, one can say, interests and groups which are playing out, and we hope that in the coming days we would have these different legislative efforts culminating into some coherent framework for managing the data flow giving due rights to the people for whom data is created, as well as taking care of the national interest. Now, the last part, we have a lot of initiatives to support digital startups. This is kind of a fad also. The ministry keeps on bringing up a lot of new schemes. Within this, we have what we call Park Impact Invest. That's a scheme which opened up in February 2021. We have a national technology fund, which is called Ignite, which finances the startups. Many software technology parks have been established. Many incubation centers have been established. 5 are already there in big cities, and many are in the pipeline, even in the secondary cities. There is a proposal to subsidize the bandwidth for the startups. And then now the latest is that an international quality IT park is being established with the help of Exim Bank of Korea. We have National Vocational Training Institute, which is kind of an HEC for TVET. So now they have started doing international certifications. Then there is a whole range of fiscal incentives for the startups, like zero income tax on IT and IT-enabled services. This ended in 2019, and recently government has expanded it to 2025. Zero income tax for the IT startups which are registered with Pakistan Software Export Board, 100% foreign ownership, 100% repatriation of profits. But eventually, you know, if you ask me to kind of comment on the success or otherwise of the support policy, one needs to think of the evaluation criteria. Number one is, of course, quality of regulatory framework. Then the quality of connectivity. Funding, apparently government is giving funding in terms of finances to the companies. Talent, how are we doing? How are our universities doing in promoting or grooming the talent? What is the status of market research? Where is the R&D? What kind of collaborations our startups are having? And most importantly, how are they tapping the opportunities? So there, I think the incentives are there. Lot of funding opportunities, usually for SMEs in terms of startups, are there. Amazon Web Services is formally coming to Pakistan, so there the government has now allocated a good amount of money to train people for that. The provincial IT boards are also kind of bringing out programs. But if I do a comparison of our incubation centers vis-a-vis global experience, in Karachi, for example, we have such incubation centers which are training incubators essentially. But there is a difference, of course, between incubators, accelerators, and technology parks. We still have to have major accelerators with free access to mentors, for example. Similarly, corporate accelerators, we don't find many. R&D, I mean, there are a lot of, in India, I understand, and the West also, there are a lot of R&D based incubation centers and collaborations, customer-centric incubators, which are there along with the corporate partnerships. So we are having infrastructure, we are moving towards that. But if you ask me to compare with the international benchmarks or the countries which are doing much better, we still have to go a very, very long way. Pakistan has its own particular characteristics. We are not getting a lot of venture capital, for example. To conclude my talk, when I was thinking that what would I say while I conclude my thought, I thought of the industry and I spoke to the to Pasha, which is the Pakistan Association of Software Houses, to their leadership. So they said that, well, I mean, government is very receptive. They are bringing out the schemes that they have recently given cash awards, which was an old demand by the Ministry on performance. And finally, they have allocated, I would say, significant resources for corporate apprenticeships since in March this program would be starting, that you would have industry mentors, you would have university professors with 2 assistants, and then they would have batches, 40 batches of students attached with large companies, and each student would be paid a very, very good stipend, and it is expected that in 4 months' time, they would really be trained to work in the large companies. But still, you see the poor R&D culture in Pakistan dealing with intellectual property. There, we have been talking about a scheme of Made in Pakistan and giving them some preference in tenders, for example. Our other colleague, Sri Lankan colleague, also talked about that, and some tax incentives for exports, but that is still in the pipeline. We do not have that. So in that sense, I think the picture in Pakistan in terms of startups is mixed. We are a large country, Ethiopia, English speaking, a lot of university departments. The progress is there, but not as rapid as, let's say, China. China has that. So there, it's a long way to go. And I think out of these interactions, we would learn much more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sohail. I think we have learned a lot from you today, and also about Pakistan's initiatives about Digital Pakistan policy and Digital Pakistan vision. I think what I really found very interesting in your talk was the number of actions that the Pakistan government has taken for digital inclusion. I think there are many layers of inclusion which have been addressed by the policy of digital inclusion, and we really look forward to some more interactions with you so that we can understand and we can also share the learning from Pakistan, how to address the digital divide, both between countries and more importantly within the country. And your insights into the data security, I think they were very useful. Maybe I will comment on a few things during Q&A if we get some more time on the personal data security. I think that is one area where more discussions are really needed. And thank you very much also for your detailed discussions on digital startups and the problems and challenges that Pakistan is facing, in spite of a large number of incentives and schemes that Pakistan has put in place. So thank you very much. Now we turn to our next panelist. We have Dr. Esther from Indonesia. Dr. Esther is Director of Policy. She is from Institute of Development of Economics and Finance. This is INDEF. INDEF is also one of our project partners. So thank you very much, Dr. Esther, for joining us. So I'll put the same 3 questions to you, and I hope we will get more insights into what Indonesia is doing. We have seen what Ethiopia, what Sri Lanka, what Pakistan, and what China has done. So over to you, Dr. Esther.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Banga. I would like to share my slide presentation. It's very short, but yeah, maybe it could give more explanation about the Indonesian digital policy. Yeah, regarding on your question related on this topic, I would like to divide into 5. Yeah, how are the opportunity and challenges in developing the performance of digital economy in Indonesia, and then how is the performance? Yeah, and then the third is how is there any comprehensive digital policy design in Indonesia, and then 4, what are the policy around data flows and data center in Indonesia, and 5, what are the initiatives taken by the Indonesian government to support the digital startup. Yeah, talking about the opportunity and challenges of Indonesia digital economy, because we have a big population and I think a large pool of consumer, Indonesia will be the 7th largest economy in 2030, because we have a market, we have a human resource, and then we have a natural resources, yeah, and then sheer amount of internet user also getting increased time by time, yeah. For example, in 2018 is around 171 million people, and now almost 200 million people use the internet. And then current fast changing innovation in various sectors such as e-commerce, production efficiency, and financial technology. However, we also have challenges of digital economy in Indonesia, like a small contribution of digital economy on Indonesia GDP. That's only around 3%, yeah. And then we still have lack of digital infrastructure, and we still have limited productivity and technology proficiency among workforce. And then talking about the opportunity in Indonesia, the strategic and widespread of digital economy, including social media and e-commerce, we have a potential, have a significant economic impact, including creating an additional 3.7 million jobs by 2025. That's a prediction. And the social media can generate more than 80% higher growth in revenue for small medium enterprises, and of course it will add additional 2% per year in GDP growth in Indonesia. And then digital technology, talking about the digital technology, so we talk about online platform and over the top, yeah, or OTT. Online platform means that the platform that enable the exchange of information, goods, and services, yeah. For example, e-commerce, yeah. And then over the top OTT services that utilize the existing telecommunications or communication infrastructure, yeah, to establish a direct relationship between the service provider and the end user. They usually downloaded the service provider applications. And then we have a e-commerce roadmap, yeah. It is issued by the Indonesian government, and that names Presidential Regulation number 74 in of 2017. the roadmap is about the guideline for Indonesia digital economy sector and how to develop the digital economy in Indonesia and how to regulate. But this is still roadmap. And then about the draft OTT regulation, still draft. So Indonesia is proposing to go further than most countries in regulating OTT services. For example, the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Kominfo, in July 2017, they asked OTT players has to register their taxpayer ID number and principal license from the investment agency BKPN. And then, so the draft OTT regulation, of course, it will generate tax. So the tax department in April 2017 also issue the regulation, and they want to tax all goods and services on the digital platform transaction. So if we talk about the Indonesian digital economy, so we talk about the unicorn. We have four big unicorn. For example, Gojek. Gojek is online platform providing on-demand services. And then Tokopedia. Tokopedia sell goods, foods, and many things. Consumer to consumer online marketplace. And I think Tokopedia is the one largest e-commerce marketplace in Indonesia, and Gojek and Tokopedia together they merge their companies into one company. And then Traveloka. Traveloka also an online travel agency, and it's a big. They sell e-ticketing. And then Ralali is a business-to-business online marketplace. Ralali connects buyers and suppliers by providing one-stop shops for industrial supplies. Of course, if we talk about the digital economy, so we can avoid the data ownership protection and privacy policy. Data protection falls into two, protection of personal data, and then protection of personal data from kind of cyber attack. So the more economy go digital, so I think the more risk of cyber attacks become universal. So we have to be careful. So I think the absence of data privacy protection is challenge that could weaken the relationship between business and consumer, thereby increasing consumer vulnerability. And then Indonesia has built a national gateway system that mandates all domestic transfer diverted in one stop, thereby heighten security risk. However, Indonesia mandate public telecommunication and digital platform companies to establish a national data center and data recovery center. In 2016, Kominfo also issue regulation. It's about the personal protection of personal data in electronic system. So this implements one of the provision of government regulations under the umbrella of Electronic Information and Transaction Law. So the data protection regulation provides into 2 years transition period for organization to be fully compliant. And then, of course, according to the data protection and privacy law, should be fairness. We have to consider lawful basis purpose, limitation, right of data subject, accuracy, data security, data retention, and transfer. And then Indonesia digital economy policy still have a challenges, as I mentioned earlier, that we have a limited infrastructure. Yeah, so there is a Java centric infrastructure more built in Java Island than outside Java Island. And then of course Indonesia doesn't have any comprehensive framework to promote a direct and integrate digital breakthrough. Maybe in couple years it will establish. And then there is no national body that has sufficient legal mandate and resources to coordinate digital innovation in public domain. And then if we talk about the initiative startup, so Indonesia startup investment has grown 68 times, yeah, reaching $1 billion US, and then jumping into $3 billion US in 2017. And if we talk about the startup in Indonesia in 2016, we have the Gerakan Nasional 100 Startup Digital Initiative was launched. Yeah, so we have an ambition, we have a target that the startup will be 1,000 or maybe more. And then this is the initiative from the Indonesian government, yeah, the Jakarta government, I mean the province government. The DKI Jakarta government introduced a series incentive to enable SMEs from SMEs makers into global players, and they have to go digital. Yeah, so they give improve ease of doing business. They also give some access of credit. They have reduced the income tax, and they have give a relaxation of import facility, and etc. etc. So the SMEs will have a bigger market access. Yeah, and then however they have a problem. Yeah, because we identify 3 areas of needs to assist SME digital transformation in pandemic. First is internet access, and second is training, and then third is grant funding. So that's the big problem for SMEs in Indonesia. As we know that COVID-19 in Indonesia is getting worse. Yeah, almost maybe more than 4 million active case in Indonesia. So the mobility, our mobility is limited. So I think it will increase. Yeah, it will change the market from offline market into online market. So I think the digital economy is developed, yeah, and quickly during the COVID-19 outbreak. And yeah, this is the prospect of digital economy in Indonesia. Still good, I think, because we have a big market, we have a big population, we have a big internet users, yeah, and then of course we also have a still growing size of middle class, yeah. So I think it will be support our digital economy. And this is I think we have a priority policy for Indonesia. So how to upgrade our ICT skills, and then how to provide ICT infrastructure, yeah, to not Java centric, but also build some digital infrastructure outside Java islands, yeah, and then how to regulate, yeah, personal data protection. And of course we we really support the Indonesian government to develop the digital economy in Indonesia. Thank you, Rashmi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esther. I think it was very insightful presentation that you made. You talked about the impact of digital technologies, the e-commerce roadmap, OTT regulations, and what was very interesting was the initiative taken by the Indonesian government with respect to digital taxes. I think there's a lot of learning to do over there, and how Indonesia is incentivizing its unicorns. I think that was also very important. And I was wondering whether Indonesia also faces the kind of lobbying pressures that Pakistan is facing, and what Dr. Sohail had pointed out. And you talked about the institutional challenges, which was very interesting. And what I liked the best was your optimism with respect to the digital economy. The population has now become an asset rather than a liability. So it was excellent presentation. Please, I would request whoever wants to ask questions, they can raise their hands and also type the questions in their Q&A boxes. I can see Dr. Chanuka. So first we'll have a question from Dr. Chanuka and then from Dr. Tsegay. Let's take both the questions together and then we go to answers. Dr. Chanuka, over to you.
Thank you very much for the panelists. I mean, it was a very educative presentations, and also Dr. Tsegay. What I find is, like, there are different countries, like there are differences between these countries, but most of the problems that we face are the same. Most of the challenges that we face are the same. Okay, my question is for all the panelists. In the backdrop of the Indian budget few days back, one of the very salient features of the Indian the budget India, if you have followed, was the recognition to a very informal recognition of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and also the suggestion of a digital Indian rupee. So these are very futuristic proposals in the backdrop that India actually was very negative about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology just some time back, few months back. So this is a very progressive step that is coming from India. I like to know from other panelists what are the policies, what are the measures that your government has taken special. Are there any special measures, or like Sri Lanka, we think, but we have not taken any specific measures yet. Anything that you want to share about the recognition of the cryptocurrencies and in large the blockchain technologies?
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Chanuka. Dr. Tsegay.
Thank you very much. Very useful lessons from Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Very nice. Thanks a lot. Just I have a couple of questions. One is the use of economic zones. So in Ethiopia we have ICT Park. So I wonder how in the three countries economic zones for ICT has been, whether they has been useful or not. And another question is about unicorns. So we don't have unicorns in Ethiopia at the moment, but how effective in sort of linking with startups, with small ones, like the difference we have between China and America. In China, Alibaba is really connected with a lot of small startups at supermarket level and stuff like that. So is there such thing in your countries as well? And one last thing is about, so there's a thought in Ethiopia about having a startup fund, and then there will be a council who would be able to distribute this fund. So do you have, I heard a mention of this from Pakistan. So how effective are those in terms of, encouraging startups? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. We have very limited time available, so I will request the panelists to be very specific with their answers, but we will continue this discussion over the emails, and maybe we can have a separate, I think, web meeting organized amongst the countries who are here, so that we can, continue with these. I think there are a lot of things which we need to learn from each other. So let me turn to Dr. Sohail from Pakistan. If you could very briefly and quickly answer the two questions. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, start with the question, the second question. In Pakistan, we have a system now since long that the telecom sector, the private cellular operators, as we say, they have to make a certain contribution from their incomes to contribute to a fund which is called Universal Services Fund, USF, which then government channelizes to support the startups and give projects for technology development. And so that is how the funding, which is an autonomous funding, one can say. It does not depend on government's fiscal space, and it is working very well. So we have had a lot of projects funded from there, particularly in terms of education. They have gone very big now. That is, we don't have a separate startup fund as such. But in many different schemes, you see, for example, we have a youth loan scheme. So one major allocation of youth loan schemes goes to ICT sector. So there are those internal linkages. Now, the first question, we do not have even a debate on cryptocurrencies or blockchain technologies. I think our fintech, though we have made a lot of progress now, a lot of people are using these apps and other platforms to make payments to online payments are also going well. But we do not, for example, have PayPal in Pakistan. I think this is the relatively less developed infrastructure for fintech, which is stopping us, but it's not there. We don't have that there. Government does talk about the frontier technologies, and in educational institutions, you do have classes, for example, on these frontier technologies like blockchain, but nothing much on the ground. Thank you.
Dr. Sohail, quickly, Dr. Esther, if you could respond. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, regarding of cryptocurrency, yeah, in Indonesia, cryptocurrency that exists today, yeah, but they are not recognized as a legal money, yeah. So they are prohibited. However, some Indonesian people invest their money on cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin, and they don't care about the regulation, and I think they save, yeah. So yeah, this is homework, yeah, for Indonesian government, whether we have to prohibit it, the cryptocurrency are prohibited, so why? And then if not, so why? And then if yes, so they have to regulate, and they have to draft some mechanism related on cryptocurrency payment, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Esther. Dr. Chanuka, if you would like to respond to the questions raised by Dr. Tsegay.
Yes, I very much like to respond to Dr. Tegay's question. In addition to what I have already said, there are two things I have forgotten. To encourage startups, we have a very close relationship with the startups in Sri Lanka, and two specific other steps that we have taken. One is we have introduced a scheme where a bank can offer a loan to a startup without any collateral. We already have that scheme that has been implemented, and there are few startups that has already been benefited from that. And many of the banks, we have about 6-7 banks agree to that scheme, the same scheme. So that is a very major policy step that we have taken. That is one. The second thing is, in our own office, we have a 7-floor office. The first floor is entirely given to startups. Right? Every startup can use that floor for 2 weeks. They don't have to pay. Free of charge, they can use that floor and the facilities for 2 weeks, and they can have all their meetings with the others freely using that floor. So that is another, we call that Spark Lab. We call that Spark Lab. They can use the Spark Lab facilities, and that is another incentive we have given to startups. So actually, if you connect me offline, like I can give you all these different examples of the steps that we have taken to initiate the startups. Because this we have taken very seriously. We have taken very seriously, and we have a very close discussion with the startups. We meet every month, and we listen to what they ask from us. These are none of our own ideas. These are the ideas that has come from the startups themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chanuka, for informing about the Digital Innovation Hub that you have within your building. So thank you very much. Quickly, Dr. Sohail, if you would like to add.
Yeah, you see, I mean,
we are running.
I forgot to talk about the aspect of technology parks. So there, what is happening in case of Pakistan is that I think they're using the concepts of agglomeration, that they're bringing a lot of IT companies, including startups, in premises, and those premises are given reliable power supply and a broadband connection, and nice small offices at highly subsidized rates for a given time. You see, once a startup comes, they're not allowed to stay there for years and years together. So that is one feature. Now the modern bigger parks, they would be more for the scale also. So that's a different model. The first one, we call them incubation centers, and now the government is spending its own money in making these premises in different secondary cities. Now, my answer on the question of cryptocurrency was keeping in mind Indian budget, that what is government doing. But otherwise, Pakistanis are big on mining cryptocurrencies. That has come up as a big kind of involvement of the younger people. So they're there. And now, according to the news reports, many Pakistanis are buying cryptocurrencies. One report put it at $20 billion, but that was too big a figure actually to believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sohail. Let me just give two concluding remarks, and then I will hand over the floor to PSI for giving the closing remarks. So thank you very much to all the panelists and to all the participants. I think we had a very engaging discussions, and I'm sure we would like to continue. There are so many unanswered questions left on digital innovation hubs or digital currencies. So we will continue our exchange of or sharing of policies in future. My special thanks to Dr. Firu and his team for their unrelenting support to this project. I also want to thank Florence, who has been providing the logistic support to this entire project, and also my colleagues in UNCTAD. The main messages I think that really comes out is that there's a lot of learning to do amongst ourselves, and this project can, we have a platform in UNCTAD for sharing of policies, South-South policies, and we'll continue our discussions. I hand over the floor to PSI now for their closing remarks. So thank you very much, everyone. So Professor Petros, if you would like to say, I'll give you the last word. If you could please unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a good opportunity for me to have information both from successful as well as countries that are, addressing and solving challenges as they move full course in digital economy. Ethiopia is a new starter, and I think as a latecomers, I'm hoping that we will have the advantage of not repeating perhaps some of the mistakes. And of course, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we have a lot to learn and move faster. The experience of Pakistan, which is, I noted a tremendous advances there, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia also. Fascinating kind of experience that we can learn from. The associated challenges that all the three countries related to is a clarion call for any developing country which wants to move into digital economy. And as a policy institute director, I just took the need for digital policy that has been, perhaps in place in China. And I feel we should be working along that line, and we will continue relating with all these countries as we, build up our effort to move or transit into digital economy. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed all who contributed to this, discussion, and this should be continuing. And the Policy Studies Institute will be on the side of this effort in whatever manner we can achieve, afford.
Thank you so much. One message from ICT team: please fill the survey when you exit this meeting. This survey is extremely important for both UNCTAD and PSI. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep safe.